I would like to ask you to, in terms of our image archive, for you to say your name and your what you do in Hollard, and then we will start.
My name is Henri Mittermayer, and I'm the CEO of Hollard, Mozambique.
Okay, Henri, I would like to start where you were going now. You arrived in Mozambique 20 years ago. Hollard is doing now 20 years, so you arrived in the start to give a jump start to the company in Mozambique, but you were, and I would like you to tell me that story in particular. You came for 2 years, you were saying, but you are here 20 years after.
Pedro, can I just tell you that it's not been 20 years. I need to admit that it's actually been closer to 30 years.
Okay.
I came to Mozambique in 1994 as a young graduate, professional graduate, and it was really intended to be the shortcut up the corporate ladder. I came here with a 2-year contract with a company at that stage, with a company that was arguably the first independent insurance company in Mozambique, a company registered by the name of CGSM, Companhia Geral de Seguros de Moçambique. And when I say arguably the first independent, in comparison to IMPA. IMPA at that stage was also coming into the market. And we started CGSM. The shareholder at the time, it was a South African shareholder, which in the financial game was not common here. The financial industry was predominantly dominated by Portuguese investment as opposed to South African investment at that stage. And there was a problem with the shareholding in South Africa, which then opened the opportunity for us to take over the equity, or be part of the equity with new shareholders. And essentially, towards the end of the 90s, we then get introduced to Hollard.
Okay.
And the decision to start Hollard from afresh was really on the back of the fact that we couldn't come to some agreement with the existing shareholders of the then CGSM. As we all know, CGSM then became Global Alliance. So at the end of the day, myself and Israel Muchena, we actually started Global Alliance here, and then hopped onto and started Hollard in 2001, at the end of 2001.
Okay.
At the end of 2001.
So, going back to that time, you remember what was because you were saying that the market was dominated, or it was more with Portuguese kind of insurance companies present here, but you saw an opportunity for a different type of approach to insurance market. And that's why you, at the time, I guess you made the Hollard happen.
Well, I said to you that the financial sector was predominantly dominated by Portuguese investors. So the banking sector and the insurance sector as the younger cousin of the banking sector.
System,
Was also predominantly spoken about through the eyes of the Portuguese investors. And the reason for that, Pedro, is obvious. The language of the country is Portuguese. The primary language of the country is Portuguese. The legal system is very based on the Portuguese legal system and the likes. And so you've got a more natural road into this market as a Portuguese financial services company, than maybe an Anglophone based type of company. But to your point and to your question, it's a good question. There's fundamental differences, you know. One of the fundamental differences in terms of an insurance contract by the in the differences in terms of an Anglophone insurance style contract to a Lusophone insurance style contract is the fact that a Lusophone contract adds in. So if you haven't denoted each of the insured peril, it's not covered. Whereas an Anglophone insured contract is the opposite way around. Everything is covered unless you specifically exclude the covers. So these are very, very basic, broad, general differences. So what did we bring to the market? A different view in terms of style of contract, a different view in terms of style of transfer of risk. And I think sometimes the market accepted those differences and was ready to accept those differences, and there was an opportunity to enter with those differences.
In that 30 years, the 20 of Hollard and the 10 before, the landscape, the banking system landscape changed a lot. Today we have a presence of several South African banks here. The insurance landscape, I guess, I wasn't here at that time, but I guess it changed a lot. And my question was in that sense, was what are the main differences from when you start in 2002 with Hollard, for example, and today? The market changed a lot, it evolved a lot. We know that today we still have a long way to go in this market, of course, but since then, if we look back to these 20 years, the market as a whole and the company evolved in what ways?
Look, in terms of I keep on saying that if I compare the market to worldwide markets, or if we are more specific to even compare the market to our direct neighbor, and specifically our direct neighbor from a South African point of view, which is the biggest insurance market in Africa, Mozambique starts from a ground zero, and I keep on saying that we are 35 years still behind the South African market. The financial sector has been, and especially the insurance sector, has been dominated or has been generated by the attraction of foreign direct investment into Mozambique. So the fundamental core of the portfolios of the premium income generated in Mozambique that we call the Mozambican insurance market has been the biggest sector contribution has been foreign direct investment.
The drive is that.
The drive is that. And invariably that was from day dot in terms of the start in the early 90s.
Even in that time it was like this.
Early 20s. Yeah, but obviously at a much smaller volume.
Because the economy was very small when you started.
The economy was very small, an economy that basically was opened up in 1993. And it was a closed economy to an open market economy. And all of a sudden there's an open market economy, and you're getting certain brands and investments like the Coca-Colas, the Cervejas de Mozambique, the Moselles, the big project in the 90s at the time was Moselle coming in. So it was an open market economy attracting foreign direct investment, and for many years you had a vehicle of government attracting foreign direct investment. So in terms of size and magnitude, Pedro, that was the difference. That is the difference. Unfortunately, the market still remains, and the reality of the market still remains, predominantly generated by foreign direct investments. We, of course, as an institution, as an institution and different competitors in the market, and that's the other difference. I mean, in 1995, I think there was 4 insurance companies, including IMOZ, which is the state-run insurance company. By the mid 2000s, you're talking close to 12 private insurance companies. By the beginning of the 20s, you're talking about 22 private insurance companies.
Which we have today,
more or less now. Playing in what, by all intents and purposes, is still a relatively small insurance market.
Okay.
You know, in terms of the market, we are very underinsured in Mozambique.
In terms of the number of companies, of the number of contracts?
The number of contracts, the number of assets, how many assets has actually been transferred. Yeah. When you think of the amount of governmental assets that will certainly maybe are insured, but insured through the state-run insurance company and not open to the private sector. The amount of individuals being insured, when you're talking about, I mean, Mozambique, as you know, is a country that geographically is subject to cyclones unfortunately, it's becoming more and more regular. And when you ascertain that in the last major cyclone, that when you're talking about $100 million worth of damage, and you're talking in less than 30% was actually insured, and of that 30%. 10% was insured by ourselves and the major insurance companies. The philosophy and the principle of insurance is not active in Mozambique. There's a lot of non-insurance here.
But things like the cyclones, the COVID pandemic, do you notice a difference in the perception of companies and people? Because we know it's like that. The insurance, most of the people understand that insurance is important when the things happen, when bad things happen, and it's like that's why lots of insurance and banks as well, they do the financial literacy campaigns and everything to create awareness. But the business changed since the cyclones and the COVID. You noticed that in Hollard, for example?
Look, in terms of what is happening and still going on the themes that a lot of the insurance market in Mozambique is really generated by companies, commercial companies and the likes. You can actually gauge the maturity of these companies as a market. When they first came here, it was the original assets that they invested into the company. Once they start maturing in terms of 10 years, 20 years down the line, their importance on their human capital. There's a mindset in terms of the importance of the human capital and the importance of covering their employees as well. So there's an increase in terms of understanding of what needs to be covered, and obviously with the recent experience of COVID and the likes, health, things like health and issues on the well-being of individuals and staff, and also the capacity of companies to now invest, retain and consolidate on people as an asset that they've built on as well. And that becomes a valuable asset that needs to be protected in such developments of the health sector, the seguros de saúde, or health insurance, which is, by the way, the quickest growing insurance group, insurance line in Mozambique.
I was going to pick on that question precisely because there's been a group of, I don't know the correct name in English, but it's a segment of the market, which is the health insurance, exactly, that you notice it's, I don't know, for the regular people, né? Quer dizer, maybe you being, of course, a player in the market, for you, you see it in a different way, but from the outside, we can sense that the health insurance is growing much faster than any other insurance product. This is true, no?
It's true. It's true. It's
and
it's
why?
a factor.
What do you? But not because of COVID. It was like that a little bit before you.
Yeah, no. It's for me is, and this is the difference. I mean, you asked me about the development of the company, and I think it's not only true for our company, but specifically true for. I'd like to think it's specifically true for our company. Is that 20 years ago, we were very generalistic. We were very generalistic. We've now become a lot more specific in the understanding of the different sectors of the market. And to my point, Pedro, I mean, still 80% of the market is generated through the commercial sector, but is what we call the intermediated side of the market.
Okay.
And that is and the intermediated side of the market, and that is the broker sector. 80% of the market is still generated by the brokering sector. We then do what we call the bank assurance sector, so partnerships with the banks. Now that's an interesting sector of the market,
which is growing as well. No?
Which is growing as well, and it's an interesting sector of the market in that the banks are really generating the individual side of things within the markets. So for the first time, we saw in terms of 7-8 years ago, the banks delving into the retail sector. So for the first time, loans on motor vehicles, loans on houses.
And so with that comes the house insurance or the vehicle
exactly.
insurance.
So with that comes personal insurance. So again, we've got commercial and corporate insurance. Now we're starting to get a sector of the market, which in South Africa, on an Anglophone point of view, we call the personal lines.
Okay.
The personal lines type of sector.
So it's a recent thing from the last 7 or 8 years. It's
7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you do have events within the economy of Mozambique, like the discovery of the hidden debt, like COVID, that particular sector is very sensitive to.
Of course.
And so there's a growing trajectory, and then all of a sudden a dip in that trajectory when exchange rates drop and all of a sudden the affordability issues and
now the inflation, for example, I guess.
Inflation, absolutely. So that sector is an interesting sector that we have pushed out on, we've bet on, and we've created resources around that sector. And then of course you've got an interesting sector called the direct and alternative distribution. So again, it talks to individuals and it talks to agencies. For example, the fintech phenomena in financial services is choosing fintech distribution mechanisms and looking for fintech distribution mechanisms. In our direct and alternative distribution division, you've got agencies at the border that we basically online sell the required third party responsabilidade civil coming into Mozambique. We've developed a product called Pagalev, which talks to, it's a product that talks to the actual reality of living in Mozambique. In terms of the reality of living in Mozambique is that if you drive a motor vehicle, the law says that you need a responsabilidade civil to a minimum amount. The fact is that thousands and thousands of motor vehicles are not even adhering to the law. Why? Because of the affordability aspect.
Okay.
And so
but that Pagalev is what? That service?
So
what?
it's
insurance of responsabilidade civil.
Responsabilidade civil,
okay.
Para o montante mínimo que a lei diz.
Ok.
Que é a responsabilidade civil, o montante mínimo que a lei diz, e nós oferecemos isso num aspecto de retail, que é tipo de fintech, through the agents, nós com uma parceria com a Recarga aqui. Nós fazemos.
And they work well, huh?
E nós oferecemos essa opção ao consumidor para pagar 7 dias em 7 dias. É só para o
Instead of paying the whole year, which will be expensive.
So you've got these three divisions, where you need to picture these buckets in terms of our market and in terms of developing. But this is where the change is. Isto é a diferença de 20 anos atrás. All of a sudden we're being more specific in terms of our strategy, in terms of development. Obviously, the big underlying factor, and I think it's true for most of the major banks and the likes, is still the commercial and corporate sector that is dominated by foreign direct investment, and that foreign direct investment, whether it's matured, so companies that are coming in or that have come in and are 20 years old within this environment, or companies that are coming in on the back of the projects up north and the big aspirations of LNG and investment companies and construction companies and infrastructural companies.
So just to resume, you have the base in terms of a faturação. The base is the big projects, of course, and then you have these 3 areas. So it's the new
the bank assurance, which is a developing retail, which is retail market and supporting the banks on that.
Then the new,
and then direct and alternative distribution,
which is that related to some fintechs like Recarga Aqui and
Recarga Aqui. We've got a parceria with a company called Upload. What has also happened that within the distribution sector, we've also noticed and understood that we needed to be more deliberate, more expert orientated, more allocation of resource to what we call the employee benefits division. So what we've done is structured our product offering. And insurance is a discipline of transfer of risk. And Pedro, you can transfer engineering risks, so once-off contracts on engineering, to major assets, to people, funeral, sawood. So you can see it's a multifaceted discipline of transfer of risks, and insurance in its very nature, you can become experts in different sectors. Mozambique, because of the size of the market, has been generalistic. And the big change now of recent years, and especially for us as a company with a certain magnitude, is that we're becoming more specific and granular in terms of the different disciplines and the different disciplines. And so, in terms of a division, which is a product division, if you like, we've created what we call the employee benefits division. Benefícios para trabalhadores, a divisão de benefícios de trabalhadores. And the employee benefits division ring fences products such as health, acidente de trabalho, which every company needs, group life, então group vida and disability, pension fund, and group funeral. So anything employee orientated is now divisionalized, and also, with different expertise to present to the market.
And in terms of selling, you sell it to the companies.
We basically sell it to the companies, but certain of the products we sell through the bank assurance, and certain of the products through direct and alternative distribution. Okay. So it's a reorganization of the company in terms of its understanding of expertise, and a reorganization of the company in terms of knowledge-based offering.
So it's like a Hollard 2.0. You are restructuring everything. When did you start with this
strategy?
When did this new
step? This was a strategy that was. It can be dated back to about 5 years ago, okay, in terms of re-looking at and refocusing on the different areas. What was also started at the same time, and we're very, very proud of, is also an understanding that we needed to. An understanding and a deliberate decision to go into what we call an industry separation, where everybody's going for the low-hanging fruit in terms of the extractive industry. The big buzzword in this country has been agriculture. And so we as a group have agreed with Hollard Mozambique to create a center of excellence within the agricultural sector. So if you can imagine, we're also separated by Hollard Agri, and we're creating a brand around Hollard Agriculture.
Okay.
And that division, which is also, but it's an industry-based division rather than a product-based division. That division is essentially catering to commercial agriculture and promoting of specific products that answer to a bigger commercial agricultural ventures into Mozambique, but also span into the uninsured agriculture in Mozambique. Okay. So we've done a very, very important, and we're the first insurance company that originally started the strategy with the University of California in Mozambique, and we've partnered with a seed creating company called Phoenix Seeds. And we've created an embedded insurance product that is sold with drought-resistant seeds in the center of Mozambique. Now, originally we had 15,000 small farmers. We've now got 60,000 small farmers that are insured under this program. But it's a knowledge-based system that we're using the parameters of index-based insurance. So we've got the knowledge of certain areas that our clients are planting their seeds, and if those areas suffer from too much rain, cyclones, or drought, then we automatically say that the small farmers in those areas have a claim against Hollard, and we essentially at this stage replace their input costs in terms of that farming. So this is a project that's hugely exciting in terms of investment into the future and the growth of different forms of the market which are not there, that we need to promote. It does hook into directly with our purpose. Our purpose, our underlying purpose at Hollard, is to really enable businesses and individuals of Mozambique secure better futures.
Okay.
So,
In what point are we in that strategy that you started in 2015? For example, that agriculture part is ongoing, but you have other perspectives. For example, with the oil and gas coming, I can imagine it's good for your business. But how can an insurance company from Mozambique work with that specific sector? You work with it already, with some, not directly probably, but with some companies that are on the value chain, I guess, I can imagine.
So Pedro, the important part of this is the communication of all of these different sectors in terms of how they engage or integrate
Yeah.
in terms of the particular market. Obviously, if we're talking about responsabilidade civil, you're talking about group funeral, you're talking about weather index type of insurance for small farmers. Our capital base at this stage in Mozambique and our investment at this stage in Mozambique, our capital base is strong enough to insure ourselves those kind of risks. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about multi-million dollar investments, the world shrinks in terms of insurance. The world becomes a bigger market.
Of course.
When you're talking about concessionaires coming into Mozambique, such as the Totals, the Exxon Mobils, the ENIs, these are these groups and these companies and their subcontractors are playing in a market that is bigger than Mozambique.
Of course.
And sometimes the communication and the integration of Mozambique as a market to protect what is Mozambique's and integrate it into the international market is sometimes misunderstood and misconstrued. Mm-hmm. So you talk about a strategic and a strategic pillar and strategic initiatives in terms of the direction we're going. Mm-hmm. One of the strategic initiatives is certainly we're not cutting out the LNG perspectives, mm-hmm. but our responsibility becomes even more important in the fact that we are now classified the biggest insurer in Mozambique. Our responsibility is to protect Mozambique's interests, but at the same time engage with the Mozambican regulator, with the Bank of Mozambique in the importance of understanding what reinsurance actually does in terms of leveraging mm-hmm. the capacity of capital in Mozambique. Mm-hmm. What we don't want and what we don't want to promote is the fact that these huge investments come into Mozambique and take essentially that bigger portion of that insurance back into the international market without coming through the Mozambican system. Otherwise, we're never going to grow into that system. So,
on what point is that?
So as you can imagine, these are we're going to delve into technical terms and technical challenges in terms of what's happening there. People love to use and bandy around the word fronting. In terms of what is it? Is it fronting or is it a form of reinsurance? What is the importance? Is the importance that a Mozambican company, a Mozambican registered company, is allowed to register the debiting of the premiums that basically transfer the risk of these mega investments into the country, into the international space. So as you can imagine, this involves transfers of millions of dollars, but it also involves the protection of millions of dollars worth of investment in terms of the country. So it becomes a very broad subject, Pedro. And I suppose the bottom line in respect of this interview is, are we playing in that sector? Absolutely, we're playing in that sector. You know that we've just merged or done a merge with a company called ICE. And if you look at the portfolio of ICE, if you look at their strategy or their focus areas,
it was
really
exactly that. Yeah.
on that top side. So a lot of learnings from an ICE perspective, and a responsibility of what I like to call to Mozambicanize that kind of business or that format of business, to protect all of the interests, investor interests, national interests, local interests.
But the acquisition of the portfolio of ICE, it was in that perspective, I can imagine, it's strategic for Hollard, but also allowed that Hollard was on the top already, but it became the
number
first
one, number two, yeah.
one of the three first in the top three. But now Hollard is the first in that, in terms of market perspective, or market, how do you say, awareness from the people. Now Hollard is clearly the first, and but I can imagine that the portfolio of ICE was actually the move on that sense. And I would like you to talk to me, or to tell me a little bit about that, if this was the goal actually, and what comes next in this sense. Because I talked to some people from insurance market, and they say that in the next few years we are going to see some operations like this. Not from Hollard only, but we are going to see some mergers and acquisitions, and actually it's a good sign for the market. I would like to ask your opinion about this.
I think it's a very, very good sign for the market. In my opinion, I think there's too many licenses for the size of the market, and what this does is put a lot of operational pressure on the market, especially the smaller insurance companies. Sometimes, in terms of insurance is a difficult game.
Yeah.
A lot of it is based on economies of scale, and when you're talking about too many players in a very, very small market, you're getting decisions and directional moves that are not essentially good for the market, and more importantly, not good for the public.
The perception,
the perception of the market, and I'm not going to get into examples. There are some pure examples of them in the market that need to be addressed. So, in my personal opinion, I think it's probably a good thing, just for the fundamental economy, the economy of the reality of a company being operational competency. Those companies need a certain volume. So I would probably encourage the merger of a few more companies, or the consolidation of this market, and a few more examples of the consolidation of this market.
You were saying we started this, but we didn't finish. In terms of the potential of this market in the next 2 or 3 years, besides the big projects, the oil and gas thing, where do you see the potential? Is in health insurance? You think it's going to continue to go up? Where is your bet in terms of your opinion about the big potential that the market has? Is to continue to approach that with the banking system? Is the health insurance, I don't know, the habitation or home credit is not going to go up, but we have some areas that we can think or predict that Mozambique is going to grow a lot, or segments in the insurance market? Automobile.
My ultimate bet is the potential of Mozambique in building up what I call a middle class, the capacity of a middle class.
That's
the capacity of the individual Mozambican moving from a philosophy of being a philosophy of paternalistic views, in terms of, there was a stage that the government was a supplier of everything. It then moved to, my company will supply me with everything, to an individual now, building up an individual Mozambican, an individual Mozambican family, building up the capacity of their own home, their own vehicle, education. So, you know, ultimately that's our ultimate bet. When we talk about these mega investments up north, the cascading effect of these investments is what we've got to bet on in terms of infrastructural development, the catalyst to create other industries, the supply of food to all of these mega projects. So it's for me, what is the ultimate vision and bet is, and I hope this is not too too aspirational, but for me, I think that this is where the potential of and the responsibility for us as an insurance company to try and back and promote you know, everything that we do, from the mega insurance of an LNG investment in the center of Mozambique and in up north of Mozambique, to the insurance of a weather index related crop, has got to be on the basis that we want to use insurance to enable the society to consolidate on value and wealth, so that you can go to the next step, of course, in terms of the economic maturity of Mozambique. I hope I'm not too broad in my answer, Pedro, but
it's actually that. Lots of sectors in Mozambique need that step. Everything that is related with consume, and then the banking system, then the insurance.
I think, I think to that point, if people are just going to concentrate on the low-hanging fruit of the LNG up north, and we're not concentrating on other projects, when you talk about Upload, for example, a company through fintech that is allowed and joined together people that need to move mercaderia from point A to point B within the country, to people that own vehicles and trucks, and they've put these two together to create an organized industry, and we support it with the insurance of both the trucks and the, that's automatically it's organizing ourselves as Mozambique.
And you are open for that, because there are lots of companies or insurance companies that are not, even banks sometimes.
No,
because in Mozambique we politicize too much sometimes, and we don't talk about. That's a thing. Probably you as your Anglophone, how do you say? Anglophone background is different, because Portuguese, Mozambican, we are we like to discuss things in the air, and government has to do everything. Private sector, sometimes they are discussing these things and they don't talk about work, doing things, getting things done. It's not we are not very practical. In Mozambique, Portuguese, we are not. And this is a thing I think it should change, because it's what you are saying. We are on the brink of a big thing happening, and it will happen sooner or later. And we are not discussing or doing things to prepare for that moment, which is strange.
Exactly.
And we had time. We had like 10 years to do it.
Exactly.
And I don't see things prepared for that.
And I think, you know, I think it's the courage to try. It's the courage to endeavor and not just talk. To your point, is not just to talk about it, is to try. I think at this point, let me share what we're doing. We're doing a pilot project called Credit Seguros, which came about over the 2 years of COVID. And we identified over the 2 years of COVID that one of the things that were being affected, one of the areas that were being affected was effectively the SME market, the SME space.
I was going to ask
the local SME and the development of local companies and the likes. Bearing in mind that that's fundamentally, again, not a huge source of our premium income. I've identified to you that it's normally a foreign direct investment.
Yeah.
So understanding that the development of what is a Mozambican company as opposed to a foreign direct investment company is hugely important. We have subsequently done an equity partnership deal for the first time with the Swiss Development Corporation, and we've effectively bought 30% of a project they've got in Nampula called Banco Futuro, which is a micro loan bank, which basically promotes individual Mozambicans, the poorest individual Mozambicans, specifically women in Nampula, but SMEs, small Mozambican enterprises in Nampula. This is a serious investment on our part, but also a pilot. It's an investment into the future. I mean, certainly from a returns point of view, and it's hugely interesting for us that for the first time we're joining private sector philosophy of practical sustainability with governmental donor funding and the like. So it's a very interesting.
It's working well, that project.
It is. I mean, in terms of Banco Futuro, I think in the next few months it's going to come to an equity a break-even situation, not an equity, a break-even situation, which is going in the right direction, and we've got thousands of individuals that the bank is lending money, not as lifestyle loans.
See, of course, no,
It's
for
agriculture or the financing of an oven for baking bread.
No, actually, I know Banco Futuro, and I didn't know. But how long did you do that operation? It's like 3 years, more or less, no?
Maybe four years now. 4 years.
Because I remember
with Banco Futuro, but I'm now digressing because the other pilot is the recent pilot called Credi Seguros. And in terms of Credi Seguros, we've put up and ring-fenced some of Hollard's capital. The thinking around the fact that SMEs probably suffered the most over this period of COVID.
The COVID, sí.
And we identified, rightly or wrongly, that one of the biggest challenges in this environment is the availability of financing.
Of course.
Financing by the banks to the SMEs. And so what we did, and we've created a team that have created an online mechanism that has the ability to ascertain financial solidity within the SME, but by not using the conventional financial reports like your income statement and balance sheet and the likes, because we found that is an area that is also lacking within the SMEs. So if you can imagine an iPad with an online questionnaire that these assessors go out to these small SMEs and ascertain by ways of photographs, by ways of visual understanding of what the stock levels is, that they will in their own part ascertain the credibility, the credit capacity of these SMEs, and the credibility in terms of financing these SMEs. And by their own assertion, we will then issue a guarantee on the balance sheet to a bank for 50% of the loan.
The collateral, okay.
A collateral. So we then give the SME, the owner, a guarantee from Hollard to the bank, basically telling the bank that we will take 50% of the risk of the loan to that SME. It's been a pilot project. I mean, certainly from SMEs at this
You are
stage.
losing money with that, or?
Can I tell you what the problem
Okay.
is in terms of the pilot is that we don't have a shortage of SMEs. We've approved more than 50 SMEs in this pilot.
Okay.
This has now been going from the middle of COVID. This has now been going for just a little over 12 months since we started
But
this.
it's okay. 50. You can.
So
Or
we've
no, you need more.
We've approved. How many banks do you think have released loans to these 50?
I don't know, like 1 or 2.
Two loans have been approved by the
2
banks.
loans of the 50 companies.
Of the 50 companies.
And we are not talking about big values.
No.
It's like small, like a 200,000.
No, we're talking
rands,
about
300,000, 100,000.
We're talking about
500.
50,000 to 100,000.
Quite small loans.
Small loans.
Pois I was going to ask you about that, because in some conferences and everything, I hear more and more the collateral, the insurance companies coming in this mechanism that is not working between SMEs and bank system, and the insurance companies coming into this to do that you are doing. This is actually a solution for that gap that private sector is always saying that banks don't loan money, so but the problem
We think it's a
still exists.
solution. We think it's a solution. I mean, we're basically saying to the banks,
We are sure.
if you've got a problem with risk, we'll take 50% of the risk. It's not as if we're blindly taking 50% of the risk. We're looking at the risk. We're looking at the risk with our own eyes, with our own criteria. Invariably, I would think that the banks would probably look at that as an IP that they could develop as well, because it would be another form of looking at and assessing a market that they traditionally don't play in.
What's
But
the problem?
but my point being, Pedro, is that
Yeah.
we're trying.
Okay.
We are revoking, and the problem here, it seems, in this quick assessment over 12 months, it's not a problem with the clients. We've got clients, and we can approve clients. I think the supply chain is the issue.
It's not prepared for this.
It's not prepared for this.
Okay.
And if anything, for me, what is exciting is that this is new knowledge. So what are we going to do with this knowledge?
Yeah.
Are we required to talk at a different level to the banks? Is the leadership of the banks, do the leadership of the banks need to be a little bit more dragged into this particular market? Is this market not interesting enough to the banks? I don't know. We need to get to the bottom. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Because this has been talked like for 2 or 3 years. I hear this, but in the recent month I hear more and more talk about this, and it seems to be an interesting solution. But I think the system is not mature enough probably to put this. But 5 years from now, I think it will be different. I can imagine.
I think so. I think the point that we're trying to make is that these things are not going to develop if we don't try them, if we don't invoke, if we don't provoke, and that's what's happening. And I think, in a sense, me telling you the story and telling you where the issues of the story is also provoking. It's also provoking. It's we need to talk about this in the market. So where is the problem?
Okay.
Where is the actual problem? And what is the solution? Yeah?
The sector as a whole, the companies, you have like a forum to coordinate some big ideas of the sector. You talk between yourselves. There's a good relation between the biggest insurance companies in Moçambique to coordinate the next steps of the sector, because there are interests. You are competition, but there are other interests that you should be together as a
absolutely
sector.
Yeah.
No?
I think, we were talking a little bit earlier in terms of the different phases of this market and the development of this market. I go back to the beginning of, I think it was 2003, when officially we registered the Mozambican Insurance Association, and we were one of the founder members of the Mozambican Insurance Association. And at this time, the Mozambican Insurance Association is managed by members of the 20 insurance companies, and it's a communication vehicle, as the banking association is the communication vehicle representing the industry with the regulator of insurance and the Bank of Mozambique. So yes, principal interests, specifically in terms of technical interests, in terms of legislation, where there's gaps in legislation, where there's misinterpretation of legislation, for the promotion of the market and for the enablement of the growth of the market. So this association has huge responsibilities, and you can imagine over this period of a very young market and a very emerging market, it's a huge responsibility. But I must say to you that I mean, maybe using the opportunity, and I should be careful in terms of what I say, using the opportunity to say that sometimes I think that the insurance industry is, to my point, and I've said it earlier, is the let's call it the younger cousin of the banking sector, that tends to be a little bit forgotten sometimes by the regulator and the Bank of Mozambique. And I think there is certainly from our side, there is a feeling and a need for education and the importance of insurance as a philosophy, as an underpinning consolidator and protection of investment and wealth. Insurance is hugely important for the development of an economy. And sometimes it's undervalued in terms of how important it is for the development of an economy.
Last question. About this, we have some technology that we have today, and the technology of the last 2 years, things evolved a lot. I would like to ask you about this cybersecurity. There are lots of questions now concerning to this. I would like to ask you if you have any product, any perspectives of this, because I don't know if it exists in the market, like related with cybersecurity. And one last question, which was the relation of the insurance market with the new digital, not new, but like the M-Pesas and the digital wallets that are amazing instruments to sell small insurance for people to like credit and other things. But insurance, it's a service that clearly will benefit from this, and this exists in other countries.
Absolutely.
With some fintechs doing it.
Absolutely.
And I would like to ask these two things to end our interview.
So in terms of, when you talk about cybersecurity, I mean, for me, when you talk about cybersecurity, what you're talking about is an evolution of a world that is changing, and an evolution of a world that is changing in how we're doing business. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the fact of a remote meeting and how often do we have Teams meetings and the likes. Everything is now cloud-based. We're not even talking about servers. And obviously, when these things open up, you get a certain sector. You get a certain sector of the dark side of things that try and interfere and create loss and the likes. So, as the formality of how we do business, as how society does business changes, so risk changes. And our insurance products need to follow suit. Evolve, and they have evolved. I mean, we have liability products that are insuring what do you call these little aeroplanes?
The drones.
The drone. We have liability products insuring drones. I mean, 5 years ago, and the liability on drone flying has become a huge thing. This has become a market in itself to transfer the liabilities of drones and what is done with drones and the capacity of drones to do what they do. This is a new sector of the market that has required a different insurance policy or a different contract to look at all of the risk elements within that environment. So to your question, in terms of cybersecurity, very much a part of the insurance that has been developed. It's an endorsement that has come in and now even attracts singular policies and contracts that cover the cybersecurity risk of companies, corporates, and the likes. Invariably, it's also a signal of the maturity of our market in terms of which, and I find it interesting that which are the first of our market to actually request for a transfer of risk in terms of cybersecurity. Am I covered? Which also is an indication of where certain insurance, where certain companies are in the evolution of. They tend to be international. They obviously tend to be international players and corporate players that have their data banks in the cloud and the likes.
And you notice that in Mozambique as well. Some companies are interested in this.
Smaller, it's small, but it's coming. It's starting. Yeah. It's starting, and I mean, we are part of a worldwide. Where Mozambique is not singular.
And now the last question, the good part of technology, which is the big opening this thing to everyone using technologies
and
Mozambique would benefit a lot out of this approach.
Absolutely. At this stage, I do get the feeling that there's a bit of a race towards, and sometimes a race towards the ownership or to be the first player within that market. I mean, an obvious one is M-Pesa. Over the years, I mean, there's been approaches even from our side with specifically M-Pesa. I understand with M-Pesa at this stage is that they are thinking of owning a certain product and the likes. Our philosophy is a little bit more partnership driven. And you'll find that, and we haven't really spoken about us as a group, but I like to classify us as a group, and I do genuinely mean it, is that we're very partnership driven. You bring your expertise to the market, I'll bring my expertise to the market, and together we're going to create a strong value add proposition. And I sometimes think over here we need to be more focused on partnership driven.
We need to understand what is a partnership in Mozambique, because
exactly,
I think the meaning is not,
because sometimes
partnership
it's
is for me to make money and for us to work together. It's not nice.
And we say in a partnership. I mean, say in a partnership. If a partnership, if we're not win-win, and in our version it's win-win-win, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And sometimes I think that the ownership of certain distribution models, sometimes I think the lack of understanding of partnerships is not allowing this to what we call in Portuguese to ignite, to be promoted. So, but having said that, I mean, we're super excited about our partnership with, for example, Ricardo Gaki. Super excited about, and that in its own platform, as I understand it, is a mobile wallet as well, and has the ability of being a mobile wallet. We certainly have a range of products on their platform, and in that particular model, it could be eventually a mobile bank,
Okay.
without the bricks and mortar. Our integration with Upload is another sort of fintech distribution.
And you are open for more like that.
And we're open for more. I mean, I think genuinely, in terms of the Mozambican law that says all foreign registered vehicles, and rightly so, all foreign registered vehicles need to be insured by a Mozambican insurance company in case they damage any property in Mozambique or kill any Mozambican citizen. So you need to prove that you are have got a Mozambican insurance policy and insured by a Mozambican company. In South Africa, they've got a fund to look after that. In Mozambique, we don't have that fund. We have an online selling platform on that basis. So on the basis, for example, if you want to buy an airline ticket with TAP, you can go to TAP's online service and you can buy your airline ticket. You don't need to go through a travel agent. So some people do, some people don't. But essentially, we've created the same capability. So somebody traveling to Mozambique can go online and buy their insurance policy. Our travel policies. We go to Europe every night. You can go online and buy your travel policy.
Yep.
So this fintech distribution, I think it's hugely important. Our strategy and our vision forward is that individuals essentially can go online and buy their portfolio of insurance as and when they need. I mean, that must be the ideal.
Micro insurance as well.
Micro insurance, and then it doesn't stop there. I mean, for me, it's the payment of the claims. What we need to do is create a seamless. You put your claim in online. If at certain parameters and the likes, we can process everything online. I mean, that's the vision. That's what we must. That's what we must aim for.
So one last question: when you started, if you could predict the future, this was Hollard that you wanted to be today, 20 years after?
I think so. I think we've got a lot to be proud of. I think in terms of the opportunity that the group and the philosophy of the group and the opportunity of representing the brand. But when I say representing the brand, we are as a group. We understand that Mozambique, Africa is a continent. It's not a country, and so Mozambique has got its own peculiarities. So the brand is Mozambicanized, and Hollard South Africa is not Hollard Mozambique, as it's not Hollard Ghana. We're different companies that focus on the country and the market that it caters for. So I'm hugely proud of the fact that we've created a culture, we've Mozambicanized the brand, and hugely proud that I think that we've built a solid foundation from which to launch a more deliberate, specific strategy in terms of the different growing sectors of Mozambique. And I think for the first time, and I don't want to attribute this to just Hollard, but I think it's true to say that probably we're one of the companies certainly that are multifaceted or starting to show signs of multidisciplined and different areas, different strategic areas, as opposed to being generalistic. Because I think in Mozambique we're tending to be a bit too generalistic. And I think that's a very, very exciting place to be in, It's a pity that, obviously I started quite young. It's a pity that we can't just roll back the years, because there's a lot of excitement going forward.